Hello everyone, this is Mehdi and welcome to another episode of the Subcontinent. Our program aims to address important issues in the subcontinent which affect the governments, people, organizations and the region as a whole. We will try to explain the issues, break down controversies surrounding them and try to have some external perspectives from experts and people.
In this edition of the Subcontinent, we are going to talk about the lives of Rohingya people in Myanmar against the backdrop of the crippling pandemic as well as a military coup. And we shall take a look at the economic growth in Bangladesh and its prospective climb up the ladder of global trade and Asian geopolitics.
While Rohingya people are being relocated to a remote island in the Bay of Bengal, prone to floods and cyclones, life is getting harder and harder for this Muslim minority community due to the deadly pandemic in their camps, as well as fires and violent Buddhist extremists rampaging their lives. Condemning the relocation, the United Nations and other rights groups have expressed concerns about the safety of the persecuted refugees as well as their volition. Authorities say they only send those who have volunteered, but the Rohingyas say they are being coerced.
Back in the time when the whole subcontinent was one entity under the British colonial rules, a lot of people used to move back and forth throughout the whole region without restrictions. But the World War II messed up the situation. The Rohingya were allied with the British and wanted their areas to be part of Bangladesh, then called East Pakistan. But Burma had an alliance with the Japanese invaders, hoping to topple the British rule. Thus were born the roots of the enmity. When the Burmese won the war and gained independence, they wanted to get rid of the Rohingyas since they saw them as illegal Bangladeshi immigrants in their country, or the remnants of its British colonial past. More than 130 distinct ethnic groups live in Myanmar, with the largest minorities having their own states under the Panglong Agreement in 1947. But the Rohingyas, even at over 1 million in population then, were not recognized, and they have been denied citizenship since the country's independence. To make it impossible for the Rohingyas to live there, Myanmar created a legal vicious circle. Under the country's citizenship law of 1982, only members of ethnic groups that settled within Myanmar prior to 1823 are eligible for automatic citizenship. And if they have descendants that entered the country before 1948, they can apply for naturalization if they can submit evidence and documentation. But most of the Rohingyas, who have been living in the area for centuries, don't have the proper paperwork because the country didn't allow them to.
The complex Rohingya refugee crisis aggravated in August 2017 following some small-scale attacks on remote police outposts in western Myanmar by armed groups allegedly belonging to the community. This was a pretext for the following systematic assaults against the Muslim minority, which human rights groups, including senior UN officials, have said amounted to ethnic cleansing. More than 700,000 Rohingyas escaped the genocide by Myanmar's military with little more than the clothes on their backs and joined 300,000 people already in camps in Bangladesh in 2017. Attempts at repatriation of the Rohingyas to Myanmar have failed because these stateless people who have seen their villages burnt and wives raped by the Buddhist extremists and the military were too fearful of further violence to return.
The COVID-19 pandemic has added to the miseries of the persecuted community. Due to lockdowns, most of these people have lost their jobs, forcing them to live on charity while hunger and poverty loom over the community. In recent weeks, dozens of Rohingyas, including children, developed COVID-like symptoms, but their camps lack testing facilities, and the community is not eligible to apply for vaccine since they are described as illegal immigrants. The spread of the virus is unavoidable in the camps because their makeshift shanties lean on each other and there is absolutely no support programs for food, sanitation or healthcare. As the virus keeps raging across the camps, they had to resort to home remedies and self-quarantine. But the destitute minority is getting closer to another humanitarian disaster if they don't get access to medicine and vaccine.
Now to have more insight, we are joined by Ali Johar, co-director of Rohingya Human Rights Initiative. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Johar for being on the program and ask him to walk us through the crisis that has plagued the Rohingya Muslims for decades and why they are persecuted.
Thank you so much for having me here. Actually, this question is should be for the persecutors, not to the persecuted. But what I can explain to you is what actually has been happening with the Rohingyas since decades. So from the beginning, I may start from 1942 when around 200,000 Rohingyas had to flee the country in a first violent attack, and then in 1975 15,000 Rohingya have to flee. In 1977 an operation called Operation Nagema, which is clearly a racial attacks on the minorities. So this attack was by the military to clear what they call so-called foreign nationals. In 1978, another military operation led to 200,000 Rohingya Muslim flee from their homelands. In 1982, military amended the constitution that talks about three categorical citizenship, where one is for the indigenous people, other one is for the naturalized, another one is for the descendants of the mixed population. So in this indigenous category, Rohingyas have been excluded. Since then, no Rohingyas have been allowed to hold any public offices. In 1990, NLD won the general election, which was clearly ignored by the military. And in 1991, again, more than 200,000, around 250,000 Rohingyas have to flee because of they were used as forced labor. Our women have been used as sex slave by the military and raped, and because of the religious persecution as well. In between 2004 to 1997 to 2004, around 230,000 refugees were repatriated under a deal by United Nations. But this kind of violent attack continuously took place since military started its dictatorship, which has ended up in a very most horrific experience of the Rohingya in their lifetime in 2016 and 17, leading more than 750,000 people fleeing to Bangladesh, joining exodus there. It's been reported that almost 10,000 women have been raped, thousands have been killed.
How has the situation changed since the coup d'etat in Myanmar, and is life any different for the Rohingyas who control the country?
Rohingya have been facing decade-long persecution under the military rule. Whoever rules the country, the minorities have been, at the end of receiving the violent crackdown. Since the coup took place, before the coup took place, all the attention was on the rehabilitating the genocide survivors, that is Rohingyas. But after the coup took place, this entire world attention have been shifted to towards human rights violation in a larger picture. So the process that have been initiated to rehabilitate the Rohingyas to actually go back to their homelands and the Rohingyas who were hopeful to return to their homes very soon have become a delayed process. So as we were already in a confined situation, the coup has brought more worse situation for us, because it is the military which has been persecuting us, and it is again the same military government there now. So the coup has brought a devastation for Rohingyas. But there is a change in the general public minds, because the military has manipulated the situation of Rohingyas by misinforming the general public that it is because of the Rohingyas, it is themselves they are creating the situation in Rakhine State. The military is just plying with the rule of law, but now the general public is realizing that they have been misinformed, that the general public has been used as a campaign against the Rohingyas. So now there is a shift in the understanding of the general public that we were actually misinformed. In fact, we were used in the persecution of the Rohingya Muslims.
Thank you, Mr. Johar, for being on the program. And now, let's see how the people have reacted on social media and cyberspace.
Remove the Fence has portrayed a grim but normal scene in the lives of kids from the minority community. RYMGMGSA has pointed out one of the particular problems of living in camps. Rain is no longer a blessing when you have no roof. Rohingya Girls Matter has touched upon yet another ugly truth about their ordeal, an hour-long line for a sip of water. Takia Azam has talked about the situation of coronavirus spread across their refugee camp. Zia Naing tells the story of a Rohingya man who has been tortured by Myanmar's military. He is Rohingya refugee living in Bangladesh camps.
And pollution and what Alita give them this country people is the Rohingya come in this Bangladesh Balokali camp 11-17 because and family very dangerous, very serious son and family, and no rice, no quality, no water, no relief, no money in give them very dangerous, very problem. But they was cancelled.
Since the COVID pandemic has hit the world, the economies of many countries have contracted significantly. But an Asian country not known for its economic resilience is doing surprisingly well. Emerging as a new rising star, Bangladesh even managed to leave India and Pakistan behind in terms of per capita income. Moreover, the country is now amongst those countries that helped India in the devastating new wave of the COVID pandemic.
As one of the emerging economies of South Asia, Bangladesh has seen significant economic growth during the past decades and is seemingly set to become the next economic superstar in Asia. With nearly 10% rise in per capita income for the year 2020 to 2021, Bangladesh has surpassed India and Pakistan with an estimated $2,227. As a result of higher than expected remittance flows, the World Bank has revised Bangladesh's GDP growth from an earlier prediction of 1.7% to 3.6%. When Bangladesh announced its independence from Pakistan in early 1970s, the newborn state was struggling with war, famine and mass exodus. A large number of Bangladeshi people were killed on their way to Pakistan and India that were the richer and stronger countries back then. But now the landscape of the country seems far more prosperous than the rest of the countries in the subcontinent. Now it is Bangladesh that is helping others. Bangladesh has agreed to provide a currency swap of $200 million to Sri Lanka for a period of 3 months. Moreover, Bangladesh is also amongst the 40 states which provided assistance to India during the devastating second wave of the pandemic. The South Asian nation provided India with over 10,000 vials of remdesivir as well as PPE kits, zinc, calcium, vitamin C and other tablets. Once believed to be so destitute that illegal migrants from there kept overrunning the neighboring borders, Bangladesh is now way happier and richer than most of the countries of the subcontinent.
Back in the 70s, some believed that the new country seemed destined to fail. Henry Kissinger, then Secretary of State, famously called it a basket case. However, recent developments proved otherwise, as the growing importance of Bangladesh is not just limited to the context of South Asia, but the whole world. In addition to remittances flow, a large portion of Bangladesh's GDP is from the garment industry, with overcrowded factories and substandard conditions. If Bangladesh seeks to sustain its growth and become an economic powerhouse, it should recognize and address its vulnerabilities.
Upon creation, Bangladesh started its economic trail with implementation of socialist policies and nationalized the majority of its corporations. It was not the right way and decreased industrial production near to zero. Therefore, the government gradually revised the policies and returned state-owned enterprises to the private sector. The reforms raised the contribution of industrial sector to the GDP, thus accelerating the growth in industrial and service sectors. With a massive labor force that is among the top 10 across the globe, today Bangladesh is one of the largest garment manufacturers of the world. The sector accounts for over 84% of the country's total exports and provides employment to more than 4 million workers. In addition, the country's service sector is now the largest contributor to their GDP and employment. Another factor behind the growth is the remittance by the diaspora. In 2019, about 10 million Bangladeshi migrants sent home over $18 billion. This is nearly 7% of the total GDP of the nation and has created a steady flow of foreign currency to the country. To keep up the growth, Bangladesh faces numerous challenges too. The manufacturing is not properly diversified, and depending so much on one single industry can have its own caveats. Despite the growth, Bangladesh witnessed a 20% decrease in foreign direct investment last year, and over-dependence on remittance can adversely affect the domestic production.
Now to have more insight, we are joined by Dr. Ahsan Mansoor, Executive Director of Policy Research Institute of Bangladesh and Chairman of BRAC Bank. Now, Mr. Ahsan, welcome to the show. During the COVID pandemic, the economies of many countries have contracted. How come Bangladesh's economy did not shrink?
Well, that's a very good question, because we think that economy expanded, it didn't shrink, but it slowed down quite a bit. We are growing at 7% plus rate, so it came down significantly because of COVID. Primarily, our several sectors was not much impacted. Agriculture was completely outside the COVID, and they had a very good output. So agriculture sector was completely intact and growing. Other than the urban centers, most of the rural area was untouched for all practical purpose. There was not much of an impact there of the COVID. So urban centers were shut out and all that. And so industries were impacted, but they recovered. The large industries recovered very fast. In fact, many of them did not, even the bank that I am chairman, we didn't have any big loss or anything. Our profitability was the same as before. So it shows that it's an indication that the economy was pretty robust in many ways. So I think agriculture plus large industries coming back very fast, The small ones have been impacted significantly, and some of the service sector activities were impacted initially, but then they rebounded very fast because construction and other small service sectors, including rickshaws, that, they recovered very fast. So overall, growth slowed down, but it was not negative.
How did Bangladesh manage to leave India and Pakistan behind in per capita income, and what are some of the factors behind this growth?
Okay, yeah. You see, Bangladesh has been growing very steadily in the last 30, 40 years. In the 80s, our growth rate was 3%. In the 90s, it was 4%. In the 2000, it was 5%, and then in 2000 it was 6%, and then it was 7%. And it touched 8%, but it didn't sustain because of COVID. So that's one part of it. Now, why it is growing steadily is in part because of we do invest a respectable amount, about 30% of GDP is investment every year in the economy. That's a sizable amount. Plus, we have a real strong macroeconomic stability. We never had very large fluctuations in the exchange rates and so on, unlike Pakistan, India, and many other emerging countries, middle-income countries. So our exchange rate is very stable, and compared to India, our exchange rate in the last 2 decades probably appreciated by about 40%, 50%, our currency, vis-a-vis India. And vis-a-vis Pakistan, our currency appreciated by more than 100%. So, and that exchange rate factor plays a role in the dollar conversion to comparison purpose. So Indian per capita income didn't grow as much because of the currency depreciation than Bangladesh stability and so on. And we also have a stable inflation, about 5% or so. So everything taken together, it is a good environment, macro environment. Balance of payment has always been very strong, and our reserve position is very strong. We have, for our needs, we have $45 billion, which is our 10 months of import cover for us. So, and it's growing. So overall, the whole macro environment has a steady growth. And you see, in the IMF estimate, Bangladesh came out to be one of the 2 countries which is most stable in terms of economic growth and macro stability. So I don't know which one the other one. So that speaks for itself. And that's, if you continue that policy for decades, it gives you result.
Thank you, Mr. Mansoor, for your precious time. Now let's see how the people have reacted on social media and cyberspace.
Umar has hailed Bangladesh for its growing economy, noting that extending $1 million loan to Sri Lanka is a definite proof that Bangladesh is going up the global economic ladder. Srivatsa has drawn a chart to emphasize on some comparisons between India and Bangladesh. He underlines that Bangladesh is helping India in handling COVID, and then made fun of Modi's motto of progress, or Vikas in Sanskrit. Kanane Iraspan has used the news of Bangladesh's growth in per capita income as an opportunity to lambaste the performance of Modi's government. Kanika Agarwal reiterates the fact that Bangladesh is now richer than Pakistan and India, and asks everyone to take a moment to digest this.
And that was our special episode on the looming humanitarian disaster awaiting the Rohingya Muslim community on the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. To watch a collage of the best bits and pieces of our show and more subcontinental updates, follow us on social media platforms, and don't forget to give us your feedback. Thank you for watching. We shall meet again, same time, same day next week. So till then, take care.